Hey guys, welcome back. So a few years ago I was at a supermarket and I saw this little microscope. It's only about £5, which is about $7. And I thought, hey, let's get that, might come in handy. And it was actually invaluable. I mean, it was really, really useful. And so I later upgraded. I bought a couple of different ones. One of them was really shit. And then this one was pretty good, even though it's only about £21, about $30, I don't know, something like that. And this one is a stereo microscope, and that means that you're seeing a 3D image, and that has just been incredibly useful, both for electronics. Like I had to repair like a processor of a computer, and also for stuff that normally you wouldn't think that you'd need one of these, and you don't have to have it, but for things like sharpening knives, it's been incredible. Now I go into this in my other video about this microscope where I explain that it's a 3D microscope. It's got two lenses and two eyepieces, and so you see a really, really 3D image in front of you when you're looking at it with your eyes. Right now we're just with a phone, so we're just looking at it through one eyepiece. But so right now you're not seeing any sort of 3D effect, obviously. But it is incredibly useful, the fact that it's 3D, because the non-3D ones really quite hard to sort of visually understand what's in front of you sometimes, how deep the image is, basically, it's not 3D. So it makes a huge difference, and yeah, and also the image quality here is really good compared to my previous one. So it's just incredibly useful. So right now we're looking at the tip of my Victorinox electrician. You see it's got some dirt on it and stuff, but it's pretty good. And so I actually use this when I sharpen, and it's not that I have to do it every time I sharpen, but if I need to see what the edge is like, it's really useful. And also when I was learning to sharpen, it was really useful to actually see the result that I was getting, rather than just trying to cut paper and guess whether it would, or just feeling it with my finger and sort of guessing, is that sharp, is that not sharp? Whereas with a microscope, with a good one, especially a 3D one, you can just go along the edge and actually see whether it's sharp or not, and how sharp it actually is, whether it's sort of sharp-ish or just mega sharp or whatever, or whether there's micro serrations on the edge or not. And so obviously you can sort of see that with your eyes to some degree, but this gives you just way, I mean, it's a times 20 microscope, so it literally gives you a times 20 better view of the edge on the knife. And so that's been really, really useful. So let me show you guys the tool that I actually use to sharpen. This here is the microscope, by the way. It's a pretty cheap one, and I've added just this big friggin' light thing to it. It came with a light, but this one is just much better. Hold on, let me move sewing machine out of the way, and there we go. So that's the light thing that I built for it. So okay, so my sharpening thing, turn on some lights. So my sharpening thing is just this. It's just a nail file. You get these at like cosmetic stores or pharmacy or whatever, or eBay. And this is just half of one. This was one of the good ones that I had. I bought some ones that were kind of shitty. But so I cut this in half just so I have two, because I didn't find the need for a long one. And then this can fit into sort of, like a little everyday carry pouch type thing, or your pocket, whatever, however you want to carry that. But I find that this is pretty good length for my uses. And so what I do is literally just hold it to the edge like this, and it's got two sides. It's got a slightly rougher side. They're both very smooth, but it's got a slightly rougher side here. You can see it says medium on that side, and then that side says fine. So depending on how much material I want to remove, I'd either go with the medium or the fine. And if I do the medium, then whether I want micro serrations, basically tiny little lines along the edge, tiny little scratches, which can actually help you get through material like a rope, or those are materials a little bit better, rather than an edge that is completely smooth. Although for paper cutting tests, for the ones where you sort of want to slide it and have it go as easily through the paper as possible, then the smoother edge works better, I think. Although I don't really do those kind of tests, I don't really find them that useful, especially now that I have a microscope. Then I can just see whether, I can just look at the microscope and actually see whether the edge is good, and whether it's good along the entire edge, or whether there's certain parts of it that need more work, whatever. So I literally hold it like this. So let's take the fine side now, because this is already fairly sharp. So hold it like this at the right angle, and there's a trick with a marker, where you put marker along the edge, and then you go along the edge with this, and then you know that you've done the whole edge when you no longer see a black line left, because you know that you've scratched off the full edge. So I do use that sometimes. That is a very useful little trick, but I don't find it that necessary. Like if I'm just on the go, I've with some practice, and I've not had a huge amount of practice. I sharpened a few knives, and I sharpened some knives. I sharpened a big fucking guillotine thing that I needed for work. And so the only one I had was just this antique one, which was not super sharp. It was just a bit old. So, well, it's like 100 years old or whatever. But it's been a while since it was reconditioned. So I did fix that. And, I fixed a few big sort of things like that. But for knives, yeah, I've just sharpened a few, but I got pretty good at just sort of knowing the right angle. I find this, and I could be mistaken, but a few years ago when I did try using a whetstone and sort of keeping the knife edge the right angle along the stone, I found it slightly more difficult, because the edge I was working on was facing away from me. So it was just, for me, just my personal opinion, it was a bit more difficult for me to see, to make sure that I was getting the right angle on that. Whereas with this, because the edge is facing towards me, I personally find that edge just kind of works better for me, but I'm not sure if it's just definitely better or not. It's just kind of what I found to work really well for me, especially since it's something so incredibly small. Now you could actually use these in the same way as you'd use a traditional whetstone. I don't think you need to get these wet, but you could use them flat like this, and then just move the knife instead of moving this. But I personally find that just moving the sharpener like that, and you want to be really careful, obviously you don't want to stab yourself, but I find that being pretty gentle, moving the sharpener along like this is just what works for me. And I'll look at it a little bit closer so I can make sure that I'm getting the right angle on the blade. And since I've had the practice, and since I've had the practice with this, which means that I could also sort of compare my results, compare my actions to a visual thing, very up close, then I got pretty good at just sharpening knives with this. And I don't think it's a skill that's very hard to learn. I'm not like some sort of expert sharpening person, whatever. So just like that, I guess you could do circular motions or not. I think circular motions would leave slightly less defined scratches on the blade, on the edge. And so just like this, you'll see a little bit of fine powder come off that, because you're removing a little bit of material. But for something extremely portable, I think this is probably by far the lightest weight, the most portable knife sharpener. This is literally like 0.5 gram or something in weight. And you can get slightly fatter ones that are slightly more rigid, but since I'm not really putting pressure on the blade, I'm just being very gentle with it, and I'm going fairly slow with it because I don't want to accidentally stab myself, then I just find that this works great, and really not putting a lot of pressure on it at all. and this really does the job for me. It gets me a really nice clean edge, and I have reprofiled edges slightly with this, and it's going to take more time than a machine or whatever, some sort of grinding machine, but it does the trick. And it's got little diamonds on it, so depending on how much you need to reprofile, it's not actually that difficult in my opinion. It takes a little bit of time. So yeah, I'm just really pleased with this as a sharpening solution, because it's incredibly easy to learn in my opinion. Works great, gets me a really sharp edge, and just yeah, super lightweight, super cheap. But basically, I'm sure you could find a free one of these from one of your friends if you don't want to pay the 10 cents or whatever that it costs. You can get a free one from the garbage that was used on someone's toes. So I hope you guys found that useful. This is something that I find just kind of awesome, so I thought I'd share that with you guys. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.